It might be, or it might, the time or the situation today might have a positive, let's say, impact, like the scenario of the oil price, the decline of the oil price that might remain for quite a long time, and the economic condition might, let's say, bring them back to the table and think in a different way that the regional cooperation is the key for the progress, and not only building a petrochemicals complex here and there because you are serving the international market, and gaining the trust of the locals or the population in the cooperation of those countries.
Well, historically, I believe I have said sometimes that the price of oil has long cycles, cycles of about 15 years.
Yes.
If you look at it, we had a period of high oil prices in between 1970
yes.
and 1985. This was a period when prices first increased rapidly, then declined, but it's only in 1985 that they declined very seriously. Then we have had a long period of low prices, roughly between 1985 and 2000. If you remember, in 1999 the prices were extremely low. Then we have had a new period
yes.
of relatively high prices from approximately 2000 to approximately 2015. Yes. Now we are again in a period of low prices, I believe. Whether, I don't know that this will last 15 years, maybe not. Yeah. I don't know that it may last much longer, because at the moment there is a strong sentiment about environmental issues and the need to decarbonize energy supply.
Yes.
And so some people believe that the demand for oil will peak and decline rapidly.
Yes.
And if that's the case, because the supply of oil is abundant, there will be no reasons for prices to increase substantially again. But clearly the first period of abundant oil prices was a period when the process of transformation of the Gulf economies was initiated. In the second period of low prices, a lot already of thinking and policies went into promoting the private sector, into thinking about how to transform the economies. The recent period of high prices has, in a sense, created a moment of complacency, that has, not immediately, because, initially the Gulf states were quite prudent in increasing expenditure.
Yes.
But later, they could not resist to the pressure of, using the money that was coming in. And the problem really is that as you make progress along the process of diversification, you need to invent new formulas, new ways of utilizing the oil revenue, and making sure that it is geared and effectively geared towards diversification and development. And this is a difficult task, and in many cases the governments fell back on old tools that are not really...
Why is that happening? Why? Because the increase in oil price is giving them relief all the time. But I see personally that the increase in oil price, if it is going to happen anyway, it's going only to pay the bills. The operational costs and the current expenditure of the government. It's not going to have economic growth, which is eventually going to lead to job creation.
The question that you're raising really needs some discussion. in essence, you know, when the state receives the oil revenue, it needs to spend it in order for the economy or the people.
By the way, I am not in favor of the says that whatever they say that oil is a curse, is not a blessing. I see it's a blessing.
No.
It depends on how you utilize it.
Exactly. You know,
Yes.
it's a tool. It depends how you use it. Now, for me, I think oil money needs to be spent. I'm not very much in favor of just accumulating oil money in a sovereign wealth fund, because that simply creates a lot of financial wealth, but it does not transform the country, the economy of the country. So it needs to be spent. And initially, you know, a lot of money was spent, rightly so, first of all, in establishing a state apparatus, a bureaucracy, so hiring people for that, it was necessary.
Yes.
Then a lot of money was spent in infrastructure, you know, laying out roads to all isolated remote villages, bringing electricity to all isolated remote villages.
I
These
guess
are
that
very
was done.
essential
Yes,
steps.
that was done perfectly in the Gulf countries, I guess.
Yes, that is a major
infrastructure.
accomplishment,
Yes.
because when you read of countries where only 5% of the rural population has access to electricity,
True.
which is common in many countries in Africa, you know, you understand the difference. So this was necessary. But when the second wave of oil money came,
Yes.
more of the same was done. So you started hiring more people into the government bureaucracy.
Yes.
And perhaps some of those were not needed.
Yes.
You started building 4-lane highways instead of 2-lane highways. Now, the benefit of laying a first highway is huge.
Yeah.
People that lived in very isolated place became connected. But when you widen that 2-lane highway to 4 or 6, even in some cases, the benefit
Yes.
is not proportional. You see what I mean?
Yes.
It is much reduced. So the effectiveness of this kind of expenditure is progressively reduced. You have to find new ways of employing the oil revenue that are more useful, more productive for the transformation of the economy.
Does this discussion leads us to the difference between financial diversification and
Yes.
the economic diversification? I think this is a point which needs some explanation.
Yes, of course. I mean, some people regard oil as a financial asset, okay? And you can look at it in this way. Oil in the ground is like money in the bank. The moment you produce it, you will employ this money in some fashion. From that point of view, you can say that an oil-producing country is a country that has all its wealth in a single asset, which is oil in the ground. And that is not a good financial policy. You know, from a portfolio kind of perspective, you have to diversify your investment. And so you produce the oil, you get money for it, and you use that money to invest internationally in the stock of other companies and so on and so forth. This will lead to financial diversification,
Yes.
okay? It will allow you to say, I'm not only the owner of a pool of oil, I am the owner of diversified financial assets. There is some merit in that, but
Yes.
that does not transform the economy
Yes.
of the country.
Sure.
You transform the economy of the country when you spend in education, in healthcare, in
Quality
infrastructure.
education, I would guess, and
Yes.
quality health care.
So, depending on the requirements of the country, depending on your stage of development, you need to meaningfully invest and spend the money domestically, okay? Not just accumulate. So it all depends. There are certain countries that have limited dimension and very large oil revenue. So maybe for those countries, it makes sense to accumulate an oil fund. you may have Norway, which is a country that when they started producing oil was already developed and industrialized. And so basically, you know, the only reasonable thing you could do with their oil revenue was to set it aside into a sovereign fund. Not everybody is like this.
They like to bring from time to time the Norwegian experience and to learn from it. But I guess it was only
well, the Norwegian experience is interesting in many ways, and there are things that you have to learn from the Norwegians, but basically you have to say that Norway was an industrial country even before the oil. So it was not a country that was barely based on subsistence agriculture, which is the situation that we had in the Gulf countries